Today's stuff we're going to be learning is Menachot Daf Mem Daled. We're going to get started with the Braita Tanu Rabbanan. At the top of the page. Chilazon ze gufo dome liyam ubriato dome ledag ve'ole echad le-70 shana ubedamot sovim tchele lefichach damav yikarim. Okay, I read that whole thing just so you see it at a glance, but let's go through part by part. So this chilazon, which is a big question, what exactly is the identity of the chilazon? So there's a good footnote in the Koran about the background about the chilazon and different attempts throughout the ages of trying to identify what was this chilazon. So they say here that the one that's most currently widely accepted is that it's the Murex trunculus, which is a type of sea snail, which basically fits most of the descriptions. Okay, it's gufo dome liyam, which could mean it on the outside it looks like the sea, or it could mean that the secretion from it looks like the color of the sea. It's the blue of the sea. Ubriato dome ledag, okay, it looks like the shape of a fish. Ve'ole echad le-70 shana, it comes up to dry land once every 70 years. Okay, this could mean a bunch of things. It sounds like it's saying they're very hard to catch and you can only catch them once every 70 years, but it seems like that's not really the case. Either we just say this is an exaggeration. We've seen many times that 70 years is used as an exaggerated number, or really as a number of the lifespan of a human being, like once in a lifetime experience. Like for example, Choni Amagel sleeps for 70 years, right, and wakes up in a whole new, everything's different. We have a baiting that kills once every 70 years, considered a murderous court, right? It's like it shouldn't even happen once in a lifetime. Anyway, it could be sort of an exaggerated number, or it could mean that some people think some miraculous once every 70 years they all come up on the shore, but otherwise you can find them in the water. But still, they're not so easy to find, and with its dam, with its blood, they make the tchelet, they dye the tchelet, which again could be just really a secretion, not necessarily blood, right? Which is really what blood is, right? It's something that's, you could look at blood in that way. It's something that's secreted from humans, so this would be something secreted from the chilazon, and therefore it's very expensive. We're going to talk today about a few things that seem to be expensive, right? Hard to get, so this is hard to come by, and therefore expensive. Tani, Amar Rabbi Natan. Okay, now we're going to bring a braita with the whole story that Rabbi Natan brings to highlight the following point. There's not even a small, even a light mitzvah in the Torah. You get a reward even in this world, and in the world to come, who knows what kind of reward you're going to get for it. Now, we're going to see the reward somebody got from keeping the mitzvah of tzitzit. Okay, we're going to see how much they got rewarded. Why is tzitzit a mitzvah kala? So Rashi says because it's a mitzvah laseh. Okay, Rashi says here, tzitzit mitzvah kala, aseh ba'alma, it's just a mitzvah laseh, which means there's no punishment associated with not keeping it, which means that it puts it in a more lenient category, because the more you get punished for doing something, right, it's going to be more severe. There was somebody who was very, very meticulous about keeping the mitzvah of tzitzit. Okay, we're going to see he was not very meticulous in other things, like, for example, engaging in prostitution. Okay, but tzitzit he kept. He heard there was a prostitute overseas. She took 400 gold coins for her payment. Shiger la'arba me'ot zuvim, he sent overseas 400 gold coins, v'kaval asman, and booked an appointment. Kishigia zmano, when the time came, ba'vi yashav ala petach, he went and sat by the entrance to her house. Nichnesa shifchata va'amrala. You can think about why this part is even in the story. I'm not sure what the significance is, but the shifcha, her maidservant, comes and tells her, this man's waiting outside. What did she say about him? Oto adam sheshiger lach arba meot zehuvim babi yashav ala petach. She says, the guy who sent you 400 zuzim, which actually is interesting because didn't they all have to send that? It almost sounded like an identifying feature. Maybe he was the only friar who paid full price. I don't know. But for whatever reason, she says, the guy who gave you 400 zuz, he's waiting outside. Maybe mostly it was locals. And here we have someone who sent the money. Maybe that was what she was saying. Like, there's someone very special here. He sent the money from afar. Amrahi yikanes. So she said, let him come in. Okay, again, why that whole conversation is transpiring, why that's important in the story is a really good question. Nichnas. So he goes in. Hitzia lo sheva mitot. She offers him one of 7 beds. Shesh shel kesef, echad shel zahav, 6 were silver, 1 was gold. Always in these stories, 7, right? It's also a mystical number. it has Kabbalistic significance. It's always 7 days of the week, right? So, ubein kol echat ve'echat, between them all, right? Each of them has this kesef shel zahav, sulam shel kesef el yonah shel zahav. Okay, between them all is this ladder made of silver, and the top was gold. Al tav yashva al gabei el yonah. She goes up to the top, which she's kishi aruma, while she's naked, so she goes and sits on the top bed. Va'av hu alav yashav arom kenegdan. He goes up, follows her up there, and he's also naked as well. Ba'u arba tzitziotav, his 4 tzitzit that he was so careful to keep that mitzvah, even though he wasn't very careful about other things. They came v'tavchulo al panav, and they slap him in the face. Nishmat, he falls or somehow comes off the bed. V'yashavlo al gabe karka, and he was sitting on the floor, like he basically rolls off the bed, falls on the floor. It sounds like va'av hi nishmatav yashva al gabe karka, and then she falls right after him and falls on the ground. And then they have a conversation. Amralo gapa shel Romi, she swears in the name of the gapa of Romi. Okay, this could mean all sorts of different things. There's all different interpretations, whether it means the capital city of Rome, or some people think it means Jupiter. Some interpretations say it's love, and the love of Rome. Okay, but she swears in the name of Rome, okay, which obviously shows she's not Jewish, right? She believes in the authority of Rome. Some people think it's the Caesar of Rome. Okay, so she swears in the name of her religion system or belief system. I am not going to leave you until you tell me what is wrong with me. What did you see on my body that made you so disgusted that you jumped off the bed? Amar la ha'avodah. He swears to her in the name of the temple worship, you could say. It's a term of swearing, of Jews swearing, right? We have her swearing in her Roman thing, the Jew swearing in his Jewish. Shelo re'iti isha yafa kmotech. Okay, I swear in the name of my God that I've never seen a more beautiful woman than you. Ela mitzvah achat tzivani Hashem Elokeinu v'tzitzit shema. But there's one commandment that God commanded us. It's called tzitzit. V'katuv ba ani Hashem Elokechem shtei pamim. And it says, I am the Lord your God, 3 times in there. Okay? Now, I'm sorry, 2 times. Right at the end. Ani Hashem Elokechem, that I took you out of Egypt, and then it says Ani Hashem Elokechem. So it says it 2 times. Anihu sha'atid li para, v'anihu sha'atid l'shalem sachar. I'm going to punish you, right? I'm the God who punishes, and I'm the God who will reward. Achshav nidmu li alai ka'arba'a edim. And when the tzitzit came upon me, those 4 corners of that garment with the tzitzit hanging down, reminded me they were standing there like 4 witnesses, about to witness what I was about to do. And they were going to go tell my God, and my God is going to punish me for this. Amralo, and now she says to me, Eini manichatcha ad shtomar li ma shimcha. I'm not going to let you go until you tell me what's your name. Ma shem yercha, what's the name of your city? Ma shem rabcha, what's the name of your rabbi? You seem to be versed in the way Jews live. They have rabbis. Uma shem midrashcha she'ata lamed bo Torah. And what is the Beit Midrash in which you learn Torah? Okay, she knew somehow that he learned Torah. Tell me all that information. And here, write it down. So katav v'natan biyadah, he writes down all his information, and he goes. Amda v'chalka kol nechaseh. So she gets up, and she basically divides up her possessions. Shlish lemalchut, 3 she gives to the kingdom. Okay, some people say she did this because what's she going to do? She's about to convert. And she basically gives it because she's this famous prostitute. And probably many of the higher-ups of the city sleep with her, and she basically has to bribe her way out to let herself free. Otherwise, they all want her to stay there and keep engaging in prostitution. Shlish la'aniyim, a 3rd she gives away to poor people. Some of the commentaries say to basically give her zchuyot, like merits, so that she'll be in good shape and God will protect her. And shlish natla biyadan, the other 3rd she kept in her hand. Chutz me'otam matzaot. She basically ends up selling most of her stuff, but she keeps those sheets, okay, or those beds, or it's unclear whether it means just the sheets, but she keeps those matzaot that she had before, that she showed him when he came up to her bed. And what does she do? Bat lebeit midrash shel Rabbi Chia. So she comes to the Beit Midrash of Rabbi Chia, which was presumably his rabbi, although Tosfot says it could have been Rabbi Chia. It doesn't make sense. Rabbi Natan would be telling the story about Rabbi Chia. So anyway, maybe it's somebody else. Tosfot suggests it's what do you say? Yeah, in the Tosefta it says Beit Midrash shel Rabbi Meir. Okay, Amra lo Rebbe tzaveh alai v'yasuni gioret. She says, command to me and make me a convert. I want to convert. Amar la biti shema inecha natata be'echad min hatalmidim says, listen, my daughter, is it possible you're just looking to marry one of my students? You're attracted to one of them. She takes out the handwriting of this guy and she gives it to the rabbi. Okay, you have to wonder what the rabbi was thinking, right? He kind of gets the fact that his student was there. But apparently she tells him the whole story and he realizes that she's serious about this. Amar la l'chi zikchi b'mikrech. Go and enjoy your purchase. Okay, it's a little bit strange why he calls it a purchase. Right? It's actually in Kiddushin, it's the opposite. The man sort of, right, l'kicha v'lakach, he takes the woman. Here he's saying to her, this is what basically you worked hard for what you got. You sold all your stuff. You came to God for the right reasons, even though you are looking to go marry, right? And that's why you want to come into the Jewish religion, because you want to marry this man. But I understand that you're coming with the proper intentions. And then those sheets that she offered to him, that were prohibited, now she offers to them and they're permitted, right? Obviously they got married. This is his reward in this world. What's very interesting about the reward, right? It's, first of all, it sounds like it's a monetary award, sort of, because he ends up with these fancy sheets, but also it's his reward of this woman. The story is very interesting. First of all, it's highlighting converts, people who convert because of marriage, although, again, it wasn't only because of marriage. It also, and the rabbi didn't seem to have an issue with this at all. The second thing it shows is, beauty is often, the rabbis kind of put down beauty. And here, the reward is he got the beautiful woman, he got this prostitute, right? And it obviously shows the opportunity for tshuva, both for the man and for the woman. And here you see that for some small mitzvah of tzitzit, right, the tzitzit really saved him in a sense. His reward was also that the tzitzit prevented him from doing something terrible. It's also another type of reward. So there are multiple rewards here in this story. And Rabbi Natan finishes with, this is what he got in this world. Wow, I can imagine only what he's going to get in the world to come for keeping this mitzvah. So again, it's trying to say, this doesn't sound like the biggest mitzvah in the world, but look how powerful it can be. And obviously there's all these references in the story to, he saw her beauty and the whole parsha of tzitzit about lo tatur acharei levavchem v'acharei nichem, right? Don't go following what you see and what your heart is pulling you toward, but keep within the way of God and keep focused, right? So that also is a theme here. Okay, moving on. Amar Rav Yehuda, right? There's a lot more I'm sure you could say about this story. Okay, food for thought. Amar Rav Yehuda, talit she'ula. If you borrow a talit of someone, now the pasuk says gdilim ta'aseh lecha, right? Al ksutcha, on your clothes, not on clothing, on your clothes. So if you borrow clothing, you don't have to put tzitzit on. But after 30 days, that's already, you need to put tzitzit on. If you've been wearing more than 30 days, that already becomes somewhat yours. Obviously, it's not yours. It's still borrowed, but enough that you're obligated in tzitzit. Mikam ba'ela chayevet, right? That's what it said. You're p'tura the first 30 days. After that, you're chayav. The beged is chayav and tzitzit. Tanya namihachi, the same similar idea in a braita. Hadar bepundaki be'eretz Yisrael. Now we're moving to mezuzah. Okay, but the same idea. If you live in an inn in Israel, v'asocher bayit b'chutz la'aretz, or if you rent a home abroad, kol shloshim yom patur min mezuzah. First 30 days, you don't have to put a mezuzah up. Mikam ba'elach chayav. But after that, so again, one is an inn in Israel. We'll see what the difference between renting in Israel. But staying temporarily in some hotel, you don't need a mezuzah. But after 30 days already you do. And if you rent a house abroad or an apartment, after 30 days also, you have to do it. Aval socher bayit be'eretz Yisrael. But if you rent a house in Israel, osem zuzah la'alter mishum yishuv eretz Yisrael. But in Israel, you have to put up a mezuzah immediately because of the mitzvah of yishuv of Eretz Yisrael. Okay, what does one have to do with the other? It's a really good question. Rashi makes an interesting connection, which is a little bit out there, but let's talk about it. Rashi says, after you, mishum yishuv Eretz Yisrael, once you put it up, you can't take it off. Okay, there's some other halachi quotes from Bava Metzia that basically says, once you put up a mezuzah, you cannot take it off. Okay, and therefore, even if you leave the house, hilkach, I'm just skipping a little bit, bekoshi yetzei mimenu mipnei torach mezuzah acheret. So you're unlikely going to leave there. That's why if you rent, we want you to stay. So basically, we're going to say, put up a mezuzah right away, and that'll prevent you from leaving. You've already invested in the house. This is the second time we're going to see the expense of doing these mitzvot. Okay, So first we saw tchelet, now the mezuzah. Soon we'll get to tefillin. Va'afilu yotzei mimena, and let's say you do leave, well, you're going to be able to rent it quickly, Rashi says, because you already have a mezuzah there, and someone's going to say, oh, I'll move it to that house because it already has mezuzahs up. So that's how he says you're going to end up with people settling Israel better, either the one who rents there, or he'll rent it, he'll get it easily. Someone else will come in very easily because the mezuzah will be up there. Okay, there are ways to do it. If you put it up with intent, you're going to take it down, but it is a bit of an issue, the whole renting in Israel and putting up mezuzahs, whether you can really take them down or not. Okay, moving on. So that was the same idea about 30 days. Once, 30 days being temporary, after 30 days already, it's more permanent. But again, that was not a relevant halacha for renting in Israel. Tfilah shel yad eina ma'akevet. We're now back to the Mishnah. We're going to finish up the last section of our Mishnah from the beginning of the chapter. Tefillin shel yad is a ma'akevet, and neither is tefillin shel rosh. That's only, by the way, if you have both and you only need to put on one, which is very strange, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But if you don't have the other one, well, ma'akevet, you can't do the mitzvah with one without the other. Amrulo, Amarta, they said, did you really say that? That makes no sense. It should be, if you don't have one, then just put one on. But if you have both, obviously, shouldn't you have to put both on? So Amar lahu lo, he said, no, you're right, I didn't really say that, meaning I changed my mind. So he ends up understanding this in the simple reading. If you have two mitzvot, you're right. If you don't have the opportunity to do both mitzvot, what we're going to tell you, don't do one. So basically, we switch it back to, if you only have one, do one. Okay, we're not going to prevent you from doing one mitzvah just because you don't have the second. What did he think originally when he suggested that weird suggestion? He said, the concern is that you might intentionally say, well, look, if I just have tefillin shel rosh, I'll put that on and I'll be done. Okay, and I just won't bother buying tefillin shel yad if I could get away with doing one. So here we go to the third sugya that talks about I'll just save the money, right? And I won't buy the second one. But and that's why he was saying if you don't have it, it's a problem because we want to prevent you from getting to the situation where you're just going to say, you know what, I won't bother getting the other tefillin. Okay, but in the end, we say that's not the case. If you don't put tefillin on, you're transgressing, or you're not fulfilling 8 mitzvot aseh. What are 8 mitzvot aseh? We know it's in 4 parshiot in the Torah. And in each parsha it mentions al yadecha and al arosh, right? Both on your arm and on your head. So because of that, they learn that there must be 8 positive commandments that you're not fulfilling. Rashi actually brings that as his explanation of the 8. Then he actually adds a different explanation of where you can find 8 mentions of it, but we'll leave the first. We'll go with the first. Tzitzit bebigdo, if you don't put tzitzit on your clothing, over b'chamisha aseh. Why chamisha? Because tzitzit are mentioned, put on the tzitzit, right? All that in Parshat Tzitzit in the 3rd chapter of Shema 4 times, and then there's one more of the Gedilim Ta'aseh Lecha pasuk. Notice, by the way, the numbers are going down: 8, 5. Then we're going to move to 3, and then 2. Kohen she'no ole leduchan over b'shlosha aseh, and that's because it says Ko tifarchu b'nei Yisrael v'ani avrachem. It says Emor lahem, and it says, there's a 3rd pasuk. Let me just find it for a second. Yeah. Ko tivarchu b'nei Yisrael, Emor lahem, and v'samu et shmi al b'nei Yisrael v'ani avrachem. Okay, those are 3 pasukim by Birkat Kohanim. So the Kohanim, when they go, if they don't go up to bless the people, they haven't fulfilled 3 mitzvot aseh. And kol she'eno mezuzah b'pitcho over b'shnei aseh. Why? Because uchtavtam. It says it twice in the 2 parshiot of Shema, and that's how we have. So this is, by the way, you can see this whole page really is getting at. You might think that not doing positive commandments is not a big deal, but first of all, we have the story saying how important it is. Then we get to all these statements that it's not just you're not doing one mitzvah aseh. It's mentioned multiple times. You're not doing it multiple times, which again is a way to say this is more serious than you think. Okay? To encourage people to make sure to be doing this. Amar Rish Lakish, if you put tefillin on, you'll also get longevity, right? That's what everybody wants. So if you could say, this is a reward you'll get for this mitzvah, that will keep people doing the mitzvah. Shene'amal, let's return to Hamibet, as it says, Hashem Elokim, this is a pasuk in Yeshayahu, Hashem alehem yichyu, ulechol behen chayei ruchi, v'tachlimeni v'achiyeni. Okay, this is about this is the tefillah of Chizkiyahu when he was healed from being sick. It says, Hashem alehem, if God is on you, you will live. Okay, understand this to mean is the tefillin. It's on you. God's name is on you. U'lechol bahen chayei ruchi, and all those who have ruach in them. Okay, they say this maybe connects to the heart, which is the arm is near the heart. V'tachli meini v'achiyeni, and they will heal me and make me live longer. Okay, or give me life. So there you see the tefillin gives you life. Okay, new Mishnah. Now we're done with that whole section, and now we're moving back to Menachot. Okay, had to end at some point. Okay. Solet v'hashemen ein ma'akvin et hayayin, below hayayin ma'akvan. So you have solet and shemen, that's the mincha offering. We're talking now about the libations that go along with the sacrifices. They don't, if you don't have them, you can still bring the wine libation that goes along with it as well. And if you have the wine, so you can bring the wine if you don't have the solet and the shemen. Or if you have this v'lo hayayim ma'akvan, if you don't have the wine, you can still bring the solet and the shemen. So we see that these are two separate things. One is a meal offering, one is the wine. Even though they're all called libations, you can bring one without the other. Hamatanot she'al mizbeach hachitzon em agvot zotzot. This we learned in Zvachim. When we'll talk about this, we'll see the source at the end of the Gemara here, which is the placings of the blood on the altar, which could be, there's two placings which go on all four sides, or there's some which like the chatat, which has 4 placements. But if you only do one, it's fine. Okay, now that's all on the outer altar. On the inner altar, we said they are ma'akev, right? That we saw. The sprinklings, right, have to all be done, and the placings of the blood inside do. That's on the special ones that go inside. But in the ones that are on the regular ones on the outer altar, like the shlamim and the asham and the chatat and all those, and the ola, right, the regular ones, those, one of them is sufficient. So the Gemara is going to start off with a different issue about the wine versus the meal offerings and the libations. And the question here is not what we were talking about in the Mishnah, can you do one without the other, but which one is supposed to be brought first, assuming you're bringing both. Tanu Rabbanan, uminchatam v'niskehem, havei mincha, v'achar kach havei nisachim. Bring your mincha, then bring the libations, because it says, uminchatam v'niskehem. This is in Bamidbar, when it lists in chapter 29 all the sacrifices and what are you supposed to bring with them for the holidays. It says the minchas and the nisachim. These are what we call the korbanot musaf, the added ones on the special dates. So it must mean you bring the mincha first and then the nisachim, because that's the order. Rebbe Yomil, zevach unisachim. Okay, this is in Shemot chapter 20. Vayikra chapter 23, where it mentions all the holidays. Okay, there's 2 places where sacrifices of the holidays are mentioned. One is in Parshat Emor and Vayikra, and one is in Bamidbar. The one in Bamidbar is what we read always for Maftir on the holidays. It's the sacrifices they brought that day. But in Vayikra chapter 23, we also get a list of things you do on the holidays, which included in that mentioned sacrifices. And there it says, okay, you'll remember, this is a famous pasuk. These are the holidays. You should call them your sanctified days. Lakriv ishel Hashem, to bring sacrifices to God. Ola umincha zevach unisachim. Okay, we're going to come back later to the ola and mincha, but right now they say zevach and nisachim. So comes Rebbe and he says, look at the order: zevach and nisachim. Heve zevach v'achar kach have nisachim. Bring the sacrifice, and then bring the libations, which is the oil, the wine. So now we're going to say, the wine goes before the mincha. So we have a machloket, which comes first. But now we're going to say, what is each one? Okay, eventually we're going to reject the reasons that we brought already for each shita, because we're now going to say, and then we're going to say, right, what do you do with that first pasuk? And then we're going to say to the rabbis, what do you do with Rebbe's pasuk? And in the end, each one's going to say, I need it for a different drasha. So, Haomer Baile, Rebbe is going to say, Menachot v'niskehem is for a different drasha. Menachot v'niskehem balayla, Menachot v'niskehem afilu l'machal. Okay, it says Menachot v'niskehem many times in the section there, because every time it mentions the sacrifice, it says, and bring it with the libations. That teaches you can even do them at night, and you can even do them the next day. You don't have to bring them the same day the sacrifices are brought. Now we're back to the rabbis. Nami haktiv zevach unisachim. So Rebbe said we get from there the libations, the wine comes first. So what do you do with that pasuk? The rabbis say, they need it for what Ze'eri said. To Amar Ze'eri, ein nisachim mitkadshim ela b'shchitat hazevach. When we say zevach unisachim, what we mean is, when you do the zevach, when you slaughter the animal, that's when the libations become sanctified, because the libations go along with the animal sacrifice. So at the moment of the slaughtering, that's when the libations become sanctified. So that teaches you something else. So now we have a bigger problem, because if each one brought the pasuk of the other and said it teaches you some other halacha, and we assume the other one agrees with that halacha, then how can they each prove their point from that pasuk in the first place if that pasuk is needed for something else? So Rabbi Nami mebayale l'chedzeiri, v'Rabbanan Nami mebayale l'minchatam niskem b'layla minchatam niskem afilu l'machal. Each of them need those psukim to teach that additional halacha. So now they're going to start again and give a different reason for the rabbis and Rebbe. Elahainu taimayo de Rabbanan. This is the reason for the rabbis, who again say mincha, then libations, then the wine. Mincha first, then the wine. Dichtiv ola umincha. So that's the part earlier in that pasuk in Shemot, in Vayikra. In Vayikra 23, where it says ola, then mincha, and then it said zevach in Nesachim, but right now it's going to focus on the ola umincha, and they're going to say so ola, then mincha. Notice what comes right after the ola, the mincha. And Rebbe Nami haktiv ola mincha. So what's Rebbe going to do with that? Because he says wine comes first. They're not going to say, oh, they all understand ola mincha literally. And they all actually say the mincha comes first, but only in a particular situation. If you bring the mincha together with the offering and the wine libations as well, the mincha takes precedence. Okay, we'll see why in a minute. The mincha v'achar kach nesachim ta'aktiv ola mincha. Okay, because of the ola mincha, they all agree with that. Ki pligi b'ba'im b'fnei atzman. But if you bring them on their own, tomorrow, the next day, right, you have many days that you can still bring it, well, then we have a machloket. So what's the machloket? Rabbanan savrei midba'im mazevach mincha v'achar kach nesachim b'fnei atzman nami mincha v'achar kach nesachim. It's the most intuitive. If it comes with the sacrifice, the mincha first, then obviously when it comes without the sacrifice, it's going to be the mincha first, and we just continue that pasuk even when it's not coming together. The Rebbe says, no. Hatam hu da'adi da'atcha ba'achila garmala l'kulei milta da'achila. Well, the korban, not the ola actually, even though that's the one in the pasuk, but if it's a shlamim, for example, you're going to eat the meat. If it's chatat, you're going to eat the meat. And the mincha also gets eaten, whereas the wine gets completely poured on the altar. So when it comes together, we're going to go with things that get eaten. Those take precedence, and the wine gets poured completely. That's going to come secondary. Aval b'fnei atzman, but when they come by themselves, nisachim adifi. They're adife. Ho'il demit amra shira alayhu. Because the Levites sing the shira when they bring the wine libations, and therefore the wine takes precedence because it has this extra ceremonial element to it that shows it as more importance, and therefore in that case the libations are going to come first. So when there's food-related things going on, meaning you're bringing it with the sacrifice, we're going to go with the food takes precedence because it's more similar to the sacrifice. But when it comes to doing it separately, we're going to go with the one that's a more kind of holier act because it comes along with the Levites doing the shira. Now, there's a little bit of a problem here because when you bring the libations not on the day of the zevach, presumably they don't sing. They only sing when they're doing it with the korban. When they bring the korban and then they pour the libations, they sing. So, but they say that it still shows that wine, I think you can understand it, is they still show it that wine libations are in a higher place because when they're brought with the zevach, they're brought with song and song of the Levites, and therefore when they come on their own, and even if when there's no song, still that should take precedence over the mincha offering. Okay, hamatanot. Finishing up this Mishnah now. Hamatanot al gabei mizbeach hachitzon ema kvoto etzo. So again, you don't need to do all the sprinklings of the blood. One is sufficient. Tanu Rabbanan. We're now going to have a brayta that shows the source for this halacha. Minayin l'chol hanitanim al mizbeach hachitzon shenetana b'matana achad shekiper. How do you know that all the ones done on the outer altar, if you do one, it atones? Shneimar v'dam zvachecha yishafech al mizbeach Hashem Elokecha. Okay, the blood of your sacrifices should be spilled. Yishafech is singular. So they say from there you learn one spilling is sufficient. Okay, then continues right on the mizbeach of God. Okay, now we're going to move to the new Mishnah. We're just really going to get started here. Haparim v'ha'ilim v'akfasim, and perhaps also a seirim. There's different girsaot here because most of these sacrifices only have one seir, so it's weird it would be plural, so some people take it out. But anyway, the bulls, the rams, the sheep, and perhaps also the goats, einan makvin ze'etzeh. You don't need the other, okay? You can, or maybe even you don't need all of them, okay? We're going to talk about this. Rabbi Shimon Omer, im hayu lahem parim berubim velo hayu lahem nesachim. What if you had a lot of cows, but you didn't have libations? In other words, you had enough money to afford to bring the cows you needed to bring for those offerings, but you didn't have enough money for libations also. So yavi par echad u'nesacha v'lo yikavu kulam b'lo nesachim. Better to spend the money instead of buying more bulls for the offering. Again, we're talking about an offering that have multiple bulls to be offered. But use your money instead of bringing all the bulls you're supposed to bring with no libations. Bring a bull with libations and bring less bulls. Okay, that's Rabbi Shimon. It doesn't sound like he disagrees with anyone in the Mishnah. It sounds like he's just adding on to Tanakama, but there are Tanaim elsewhere who disagree with him about this. Okay, so now the question is, which I didn't really address, but the Gemara is going to address it right now, which is why I didn't address it before. Hane parim ukvasim dehecha. What parim ukvasim are we talking about? What sacrifices have bulls, rams, and sheep? Actually, a whole bunch of them. And now we're going to try to figure out which one. We're only going to get started today. Ilema dechag, if you're talking about on Sukkot. Okay, there you're supposed to bring bulls. If you remember, every day it gets less the number of bulls you're supposed to bring. Altogether, you bring 70 bulls. And then there's the elim and kfasim that go along with that. Well, in that case, kamishpat kimishpatam ktibuhu. It says by all of them according to the law. Okay, the law or their laws. Their law. So either which way, it says their law, which means it has to be done this way. And of course they're ma'akev. So the Mishnah can't be referring to that. Maybe it means the ones you bring on every new moon holiday, right? The first of every month. And the ones on Shavuot, which we'll talk about those tomorrow more. The ones mentioned in Bamidbar, as I said before, right? At the end of Bamidbar there. So there it lists all the animals, the Musafim you're supposed to bring. Maybe it's talking about those, and we're going to see whether we can explain that or not. So we're going to stop here and mid-question really and see if we can figure that out in tomorrow's daf. What are we referring to in this Mishnah? Okay, so what we did today is we started with the Chilazon. We went to the importance of how important any small mitzvah is. Right from there we got to not only tzitzit, also tefillin and doing Birkat Kohanim and mezuzot. Right? And even though they're mitzvot, I say, but there's multiple positive commandments in them. So it's not just like doing one mitzvah, it's like doing multiple ones. We saw the whole story with the prostitution, how it saved him and how he got rewarded in the end in this world, and all the more so how much reward he'll get in the next world. We ended that section with Rish Lakish saying also you'll get longevity if you put on tefillin. Also from there, by the way, we got into the tefillin shel Rosh and tefillin shel Yad, that you can do one without the other, and that statement of Rav Chisdu then changed his mind and said, no, it's not really right, when his students questioned him. Then we got to the solet and the shemen and the wine, and we talked about the libations. Which one comes first? Machloket Rebbe and the rabbis. And then we thought we knew where they got it from. In the end, we said, no, those psukim are needed for other things. And we then learned it from what exactly the debate is. We even limited their debate, that they all agree. If you bring them with the sacrifice, of course, the olah u'nesachim. The nesachim are going to come first. But the mincha is going to come first. My mistake. The mincha is going to come first. Olah u'mincha. And then the question just becomes, what if you bring them separately? Does the wine take precedence because it was brought with shira, with song, or do we keep it the same as if we brought them together with the other offering? From there, we finished up with the matanot on the altar that aren't ma'akev ze'etzeh, on the outer altar, and then we talked about the amount of bulls, sheep, and rams that you have to bring for sacrifices, or the fact that you have to bring all of these different types is not ma'akev ze'etzeh. Okay, it doesn't prevent the rest from being brought. With that, we finish for today. Wishing everyone a good day.